15-year-old me would have been saying a lot of not great stuff on a live stream. 38-year-old me does it on these shows. And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, May 3rd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by So Rare, and we probably would have been better off just letting Steve host this one. But, what are you going to do? Another dub yesterday for the Colts. Before we get started, everybody hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are Under Our Bodies. Adam, what's going on, man?
Yeah, man, how's it going? It feels weird doing a baseball show with you. I know it's my preferred show, but you are still very much into basketball.
Oh, I thought you meant it was your preferred show doing one without me.
No, I just meant baseball in general.
Gotcha. I mean, I don't mind it. I was a little nervous today. I thought that I was going to open this up and find out that it was like a 3-game MLB slate tonight. And I was just going to be like, yeah, we're going to have to swap some people around here because I don't know if I can get an hour out of Adam for 3 baseball games when I don't have anything to add to the table. But I looked it up and saw that it was 8. I was like, oh, perfect. We'll
just got my lineups in for the 3-gamer. So now waiting for a couple lineups to come out still for the main slate.
So, yeah, we've got 8 games to talk about here. We're going to treat it like a normal show, just hit every single game and work our way through it. I think that's just sort of the easiest way because we do have the hard out at the top of the hour for NBA Live Before Lock coming up at 7. So we will be sneaking out of here a little bit before the actual MLB lock. How have the baseball streets been? Because I have not been dipping my toe in this water since the NBA playoffs have started.
They've been fine. Nothing big so far. For me, obviously for Steve, they've been really good, but results have been decent in terms of how lineups have looked and everything. Just nothing has come together yet.
I know we've talked about it already. It's gotten crazier even since then. Like, I wish that there was some sort of documented. This is the hottest run. Like, I should probably shoot the DM or something to Alex. Be like, do you have the capability of like querying your stuff to find out like the most 50+ K hits that you had over the course of a 2-week stretch?
Yeah,
I just want to know where it stacks up.
Have you and I already talked about this on the show? Because I know I've talked about it with Neil.
Vaguely.
Okay. I was going to say, like, as far as what I can remember or what I've noticed, this has to be up there as far as just like nightly large field tournaments. Like, Alex had the run where he was winning the big special tournaments.
Yeah.
Jeff had the run where he was just at the top of every live final. But in terms of just like nightly beating out 20,000 people, this has to be, it's the best I can remember.
I mean, think about it like this, because you and I talked about it while it was happening. Drew shipped NBA like 3 times in the span of 10 days earlier in the season. And we were just like, what a ridiculous run this is.
And Jesse did it twice in 3 days.
Yeah. And this is just like on a fully different level.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, kudos, obviously.
Yeah,
but this is
great.
We can cross promote. Well, not cross promote. I'm not going to say anything negative in this scenario. Big T responded saying, please don't put Steve on any shows. I was like, this is the true definition of running pure.
Yeah.
might need to change the company name at this point because no one's doing it more than Steve at this point.
He used to do shows occasionally, didn't he?
Yeah, he popped on from time to time. He was doing more of the like live office hours type stuff, I believe, if I remember correctly. What do we call it? Like game plan or something, maybe? But yeah, he was on shows from time to time. There you go. On the contrary for NFL. Appreciate you there, Jordan. Yeah, it's like now I'm at the point where I just want to see it happen. Like, I mean, as long as I'm not in the contest, obviously, which for baseball, he can have them all. For NBA, I need him to stop immediately. But it's fun, man. It's fun to see. I can't even, like, there's no words. It's the heater of all heaters. If I'm him, I'm jamming into sports I don't know right now just to see like how much I can make it, how I can do it. I don't think he plays MMA. I can't picture seeing the name like when I'm sweating myself, but
yeah, I have no idea.
If I'm him, I'm unquestionably putting 150 into the UFC pay-per-view for this Saturday. Gonna be a fun card too. Did you see? I assume you saw the news about Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena.
I did not.
Fight is postponed. Irene Aldana taking Pena's spot. I guess Pena broke some ribs. I was like, oh, well, at least she got those broken ribs out of the way now instead of during
When was the fight supposed to be?
Month or two.
Okay.
Yeah, soon. Like sometime soon. With maybe next month. But yeah, I was just thinking like, well, last time we saw that fight, we got to see the blood live and in person in the cage.
Last time we saw that fight was one of the last times I actually had a good DFS day.
Yeah, do you remember what it was like to have money?
Yeah, oh, man, I do, and I kind of wish I didn't.
Yeah,
it makes it more depressing.
At that time, you were Amanda Nunes, and now you feel like Juliana Pena.
Yeah.
You ready to do this baseball show?
Yep.
All righty, let's do it. What's his total winnings on this heater? 500 grand. I don't know. More than that. Yeah.
Total winnings has to be more than that. I don't know what.
Yeah. Total winnings is well more than that. A lot. Anyway, let's get into this bad boy. We're starting it off. Yankees and Guardians, 3.6 run implied total for the Yanks, 4.1 for the Guardians. Clark Schmidt going for the Yanks. That doesn't sound like it sounds like he'd be the Yankees accountant. Shane Bieber going for the Guardians. 12% ownership coming into Schmidt, 11 coming into Bieber. One of these guys is cheap. One of these guys is expensive. Who's the guy you're more likely to get to?
I think they're both sort of tricky. Bieber is the guy clearly with more name value, and you're going to feel better clicking on his name, but there's some legitimate concerns with him as well. 2 years ago, 2021, he had a 33 or 31% strikeout percentage. I think it was 33.1. The actual number is in the article I wrote earlier, but it was like 33% in 2021. It dropped to 25% last year. This year, he's at 17%. And that number probably is going to increase just based on pedigree and track record. But I think it's very safe to be concerned about somebody who has seen their strikeout percentage drop 15 points, from 2021 to now. And he's still not been bad in terms of limiting power and, getting outs. That part's been fine. But I do think that there's reason to be concerned about his strikeout upside. The matchup against the Yankees isn't bad. You still don't have Judge. You don't have Stanton. You don't have Donaldson. This is a much different Yankees lineup than you normally get. 3.6 implied run total. So everything factored in, Bieber does still look decent, pulling 11% ownership, 16% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I don't mind it if I get there, but a couple years ago, if you were getting a $9,500 Bieber against a watered down Yankees lineup, it would just be a slam dunk, one of the easiest plays on the slate. Yeah. He very much looks like a different pitcher than he was not very long ago. So I think, keeping that in mind is important. On the other side with Schmidt, the strikeout stuff is legitimate. He's striking out a lot of guys this year. The problem for him is that he's not doing a very good job of limiting power and limiting production. So kind of the exact opposite of what we've seen from Bieber. And that really scares me here when you're going up against a Cleveland team that is difficult to strike out and also has a lot of left-handed power that is now going into Yankee Stadium, where you have the short porch in right field. So far this year, Schmidt has struck out 26% of lefties, 28% of righties, but he's also allowed a 302 expected ISO to lefties, 172 to righties. You look at this Cleveland lineup, and you have Ramirez, Naylor, Bell, Jimenez, all in the middle of this order. Will Brennan's got some power. Stephen Kwan last year was a good hitter. This year he's off to a slow start, but still left-handed at the top of this order. You have a lot of guys that are tough to strike out, have power, and hit from the left side in a park that plays up left-handed power. I'm a little surprised Cleveland only has a 3.9 implied run total here. Looking at the top stacks tool, they're coming in middle of the pack, 4% top stack percentage, 4% aggregate ownership. I'm just interested in them from a home run upside standpoint. Like, sure, Schmidt could just have a good game, and there is upside for him at 5,900 as well. But I really like the idea of getting to some guys that put the ball in play against a pitcher that doesn't do a good job of limiting power in a park that's going to play it up.
When I look at the stacks here, Yankees 13th in our top stack tool, the Guardians are 9th. Do you see yourself in a situation where you're going to have a lot of the batters on either side of this one?
So I haven't built lineups yet, so I don't know what I'll actually get to. I will say that just from a what I would like my stuff to look like, what I would like to get to standpoint, I'd like getting to Cleveland here, whether it's as full stacks, 2-mans, 3-mans, whatever. I just like the home run upside they give you. I think it's more difficult for me to get to the Yankees because, one, this lineup's not that strong, and then two, Bieber's still done a decent job of limiting production. 172 expected ISO to righties this year. 355 expected WOBA is relatively high. 118 expected ISO to lefties, 312 expected WOBA there. I still certainly have respect for Bieber as a pitcher, even if the strikeout stuff has come down. And with the Yankees, it just becomes tough to point to a lot of guys that you like. Volpe leading off looks good. Torres and Rizzo look fine. Kind of run out of guys that you really feel good about getting to. Like, could Calhoun get into one? Sure. Could Jake Bauers, who's back in the lineup, get into one at 2K? Sure. But it's a much, much different team than normal. Whereas with Cleveland, I have no issue at all pointing to hitters that I legitimately like.
Yeah, I think the Cleveland side looks a little bit more interesting, at least based on that ownership that we're getting now, which is essentially non-existent outside of Jose Ramirez. So I don't have anything else here for Yanks and Guardians. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, we did not related to this game. We did just get the Seattle lineup. So just waiting on the Milwaukee lineup now. Julio Rodriguez is in the lineup for Seattle. He was at this time yesterday also. So make sure he doesn't get scratched, but looks like he's back.
All right. We'll go to game number 2. Nats and Cubs, 3.4 run implied total for the Nationals, 4.7 for the Cubs. Jake Irvin going for the Nats. Marcus Stroman on the hill for Chicago. No real ownership coming into Irvin, just 4%. He is the flat minimum 4K. 13% ownership coming into $9,100 Stroman. Let's start with Stroman since he's getting a little bit of love. 9,100 here. Do you prefer him to Bieber? How do you see those guys since they're comparably owned and comparably priced?
Yeah, comparable ownership, similar pricing. It feels really, really weird to say, but I give the edge to Stroman.
That might be the first time you've ever done that on a show.
Yeah. Stroman has always, for his entire career, been a pitcher who's pretty good at getting ground balls, pretty good at getting outs, not great at getting strikeouts. You have a Nats lineup that doesn't have the most strikeouts in it, but we have seen an uptick in strikeout stuff for Stroman so far this year. Don't know if it'll hold or not, but 22% strikeout percentage to lefties is pretty much in line with what we had last year. But last year, he only struck out 18.5% of righties. This year, he's at 26%. So he is a pitcher that I know has switched to throwing that sweeper a bit more. Maybe we see that continue to have an increase, a positive effect on his strikeout numbers. Even if we don't, even if you just are talking about what Marcus Stroman's been his entire career, that kind of is what Shane Bieber appears to be at this point also, just at a cheaper price tag facing the Nats instead of the Yankees. So I do think I prefer Stroman here. I don't think it's by a wide margin, but also the field isn't projected to like him by, to prefer him by a wide margin either. You have 14% ownership coming into him on DraftKings compared to 11% for Bieber, 21% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings compared to 16% for Bieber. So they're similar, but I do think Stroman looks better. We have him projected better by about 1.5 as well.
Jake Irvin, flat 4K. Is this a spot you need to go all the way to the bottom pitching?
I don't think you need to go all the way to the bottom. And also, he doesn't look like a particularly appealing pitcher. This isn't yesterday's slate where you had a top 100 pitching prospect coming in at 4K for the Mariners. This guy's 26, I think pushing 27 years old, not a top 100 not a prospect by any stretch. His AAA numbers aren't particularly impressive. He struck out about 20% of hitters there, FIP north of 5. This just looks like a guy where the Nats are sort of in a situation now where their major league team sucks. Their farm system isn't very advanced yet. And so you're just getting sort of throwaway filler that gets called up from the minor leagues to make some starts as opposed to legitimate prospects. That's what Jake Irvin looks like at this point. So I'm not looking to roster him. If you do need to pay down for pitching, there are some guys that you can get to, that I would prefer to get to over Irvin. And yeah, I don't really think you need to get there.
Irvin, birthday, February 18th, just recently 26.
Just turned 26. Okay.
Let's talk bats, and I think that we're going to be going to the Cubs side, 5th in top stack, 8th in top value, 6th overall in ownership. Seems like we're getting a little bit of love here, trying to attack the Irvin side of this one, but at the same time, it's not like the Cubs themselves are heavily owned. It's just sort of everybody's like 6 to 8%. What do you want to do with Chicago?
Yeah, they look pretty good here. Like we were just saying, Irvin doesn't look like a particularly good pitching prospect. There's always volatility when guys make their major league debuts, and it goes in both directions. You never know how a guy is going to be nerves-wise, how much it's going to affect them. But you also, when you talk about major league hitters, and this came up on a show the other day where you had a Chris Flexen get scratched for Seattle against Toronto and replaced with some guy that had never pitched in the majors. These guys are very, very reliant on scouting reports, preparation, all of that stuff. It's not, when you're in high school and you just walk in the box and swing at what is thrown to you. Like, so you can see it go both ways where nobody's seen this guy before. And yes, they have scouting reports on what he throws and what he's going to do, but you don't have the same level of video and all of that you do once guys are in the major leagues and you've seen them 1 or 2 times. So there is that other side where it's like this pitcher may not end up being good, but in this start when nobody's seen him before, he could still have success. So there's always a lot of volatility in spots like this. I think even more so than usual, but the Cubs do look pretty good. 7% chance of being the top stack, 7% ownership projection. You have a normal Cubs lineup in terms of power. Happ, Bellinger, Suzuki in the middle of the order. Swanson and Horner, of course, give you upside at the top. You have a cheap Trey Mancini hitting 6th. Patrick Wisdom, I know Dean put out a tweet earlier today. I think it's that Patrick Wisdom like leads baseball in home runs. He's like first in exit velocity and barrel percentage, and just like every stat you could want. And the Cubs just continue to bat him 8th behind Eric Hosmer. So if you are stacking the Cubs, don't be afraid to go to Patrick Wisdom, even though he's sitting towards the bottom of the order for unknown reasons. But there is a lot of upside in this lineup.
How many different competitors do you think you and I are going to mention today on this show?
Right, I was thinking
is Moonball still around? Oh man, that feels good. Wow. Fangraphs 2, Electric Boogaloo. What do you want to do with the Nats? Obviously, not a lot of high-end talent on this one, but they are number 1 in value.
I don't really see getting to much of them. I don't think that you need the value all that much on this slate. Even factoring in the value, they have a 3.1 stack score in the top stacks tool, which is 3rd from the bottom. Stack score is the metric that weights top stack percentage and value instead of just saying, ownership versus top stack percentage, because that will lead you to saying, oh, well, you should just be jamming in these low-owned great teams that also cost $6,000 across the board and are like impossible to get to. But even factoring in the Nats value, they are, it looks like 3rd from the bottom, just ahead of the Yankees and the Cardinals. So pretty tough to want to get to anything there. Stroman does typically do a good job limiting power. The Nats themselves don't have much power. If you wanted to, I guess, get to like a cheap Luis Garcia or Keibert Ruiz here and there, I could see it. But there's plenty of other spots I'd rather get to.
All righty. Well, this is going to be pretty easy. Schedule for the rest of the day. We're not going anywhere for a while, folks. So if you're looking to take in Stokastic content, today's probably the day to do it. Start by hitting the like button. That will help us out a ton. We want to get that number up over 100. But 2, we've got NBA Live Before Lock coming up next at 7 o'clock. We've got Celtics Sixers Game 2. Welcome back, Joel Embiid. Yeah, welcome back, Joel Embiid. Marcus Smart also available to play for today. We don't stop there. We've got PGA Live Before Lock coming up after the NBA show at 8 p.m. So 3 straight hours of live content on our YouTube channel. You don't want to miss it, folks. What else do you have to do on a random Wednesday? Watch our shows, play DFS. It's all good. That's what we want. Now, Game 3, Chicago White Sox, 4.1 run implied total. Twins, 3.8. Dylan Cease and Louis Varland. 35% ownership coming into Cease. He is $10,300. $1,100 cheaper than Shohei Ohtani. Basically twice as owned. On the opposite side for Varland, 6K, 21% owned. We've got a patch of guys from 5,700 to 6,100 that are all like, 15 to 20% owned. Let's start with Cease. How do you feel about him now as the sort of pay up option du jour?
I think he looks good. I mean, it's Dylan Cease. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. 29.7% strikeout percentage since last season, 3.24 FIP. Not my favorite matchup against Minnesota. They do have a lot of solid hitters in this lineup, but it's like 45 to 50 degrees in Chicago. So pretty nice temperatures for pitching. And Cease is really, really good. I'm a little concerned by the ownership there when, like you said, you're getting basically 1.5 times the ownership going to him that you are Ohtani. You're getting like 2.5 times the ownership going to Cease that you are Stroman. I think he looks good. We have him projected right now as the second highest scorer, but still just like 18.7 DraftKings points is his projection. It's not like this isn't one of those, Spencer Strider, Jacob deGrom spots where Cease just projects 5 points ahead of everybody else and there's nothing you can do about his ownership. So I am a little concerned by the ownership, but overall still a really, really good pitcher. I'm not going to be upset if I do get to Cease. I just do think he's a little bit more popular than he probably should be.
I think it's probably closer between him and Ohtani. Seems like there's enough money out there. I think it's very clearly the two of them. Previous years, Bieber would be in this discussion at that price tag, but that's just not going to be the case today. What about Varland on the opposite side? 6K going up against this White Sox team. Bit of power for Chicago. Do you like to get to Varland?
Yeah, I like the salary here. He's a bit of an unknown, made 5 starts in the major leagues last year. Wasn't great, had a 4.3 FIP, struck out about 20 and a half, about 20% of hitters, but he projects to be better than that. He struck out in his 3 starts at AAA this year, struck out 40% of hitters. He had 4 starts at AAA last year where he struck out 32% of hitters. He struck out 26.5% at AA last year. The bat projects him for a 25% strikeout percentage going forward. Zips is at 22%. So he projects as, a good, a decent to good strikeout pitcher. Decent matchup against the White Sox. Nice pitching weather, like I was saying when we talked about Cease. At 6K, I'm certainly interested in getting there. It's going to open up bats for you. You do have a Coors Field game. Granted, that game is not the most expensive, but you have plenty of offenses that you would like to get to, and now you can pay for if you go to Varland. I don't really have any problems with him pulling 20% ownership here. I do prefer him when you're talking about the guys in this like 6K range. I prefer Varland to Michaelis. I prefer him to Sears. I prefer him to Schmidt. So he is the guy, the pay down option that I would get to first. That's backed up in the top pitchers tool as well. 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Highest chance of being a top 2 pitcher of anyone below Logan Gilbert's $8,500.
There we go. I'll let you take your pick. Do you want to talk about either one of the White Sox or Twins? They are 9th and 10th in ownership. They are 11th and 14th in our stack score. Do one of those guys stand out more? I'm guessing the Twins, not as interesting because Cease is on the opposite side.
It kind of goes both ways because, like, when you're just thinking about the pitchers, clearly you have more confidence in what Dylan Cease is bringing to the table than what Louis Varland is bringing to the table. But I also have more confidence in Kepler, Polanco, Correa, Buxton, Gallo than I do, a bunch of guys on the White Sox that were supposed to be good and never really got there. Anderson, Benintendi, Vaughn, Jimenez, like they're all fine, but they haven't become like, but by now you were supposed to have a White Sox team that was just loaded with stars. Now you have a White Sox team that is just loaded with like decent hitters. So it kind of goes both ways. Like certainly would rather take hitters against Varland, but I would also rather take the actual hitters on the Twins over the ones on the White Sox. So they kind of just end up looking similar where I'm not looking at either pitcher, targeting something specifically. If you want to say, Louis Varland is a guy making like his 6th or 7th major league appearance and he's 20% owned, I'll take the batters against him. That's fine. If you want to say nobody's playing a bunch of good hitters on the Twins in large field tournaments, that's fine. But there's no real case that I can make for either side saying like, this is why I think they look good.
I'm glad we don't have to deal with the Giants on this main slate. Quote from Logan Webb.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
The whole trip has been a grind. It's been a mental grind and a physical grind. 3/4 of our clubhouse has the shits. It'll be good to get back home. Hopefully the shits go away.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh man, I had to read that. That's just too funny. What a quote. What a quote. I agree, by the way. I had them in the middle of the night. Woke me up aggressively. Not fun. Not fun.
You can't blame it on Mexican drinking water though.
I can't blame it on Mexican drinking water. I had a Corona.
No, that counts.
Something like that. Anything else that we should be touching on here, White Sox or Twins?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it seems less than appealing when the highest owned hitter on either side is 6% owned Eloy Jimenez. All right, and we'll go to game number 4 here. Red Sox and Blue Jays. 4.4 run implied total for the Sox, 4.9 for the Jays. It's Nick Pivetta. It's Alek Manoah. 1.5% ownership coming into Pivetta. 3.5% coming into Manoah. These guys are basically priced the same. I think I know which guy you would rather get to, but will you be rostering either pitcher with any sort of volume?
So I would rather get to Manoah just because he's cheap. He's facing the Red Sox instead of the Blue Jays. But I don't love either pitcher here. I think this sets up as an incredibly difficult matchup for Manoah. So Manoah's had some issues this year, but even going back to last year, his biggest weakness since the start of last season has been a lack of strikeouts against left-handed bats. 18.8% strikeout percentage against lefties since last year, 26.8% against righties. So far this year, that number against righties is down to 20.6%. The number against lefties has held at 18.5%. But when you look at this Red Sox lineup, you have 6 left-handed hitters in the top 7, and most of these guys are good. Verdugo, Yoshida, Devers, Duran, Tristan Casas, one of the top hitting prospects in baseball. this sets up as a really difficult spot for Manoah, just based on what we've seen from him, even when he's good. And then this year, you have questions about how good exactly is he based on how he started this year out. Since last year, 171 expected ISO to lefties with that 18.5% strikeout percentage. This year specifically, he's allowed a 172 actual ISO with a 308 expected ISO and a 440 expected WOBA. Again, like from a talent standpoint and what I think he's likely to be going forward, I don't hate getting to him at 3% when other guys like Varland, who also, are somewhat question marks, are getting 20%. But I hate this matchup for him. On the other side, Pavetta's always been somebody that has decent strikeout stuff, also gives up power, and he gives it up to both sides of the plate. Really dangerous spot for him facing a right-handed heavy Blue Jays lineup in Fenway. You have 7 right-handed hitters in this Toronto lineup. The only lefty in the top 8 is Dalton Varsho, who is a very good left-handed hitter. And like I was saying, it's not like Pivetta does a good job limiting power to either side of the plate. And Fenway, we know, plays it up for right-handed bats. All you have to do is hit a fly ball high enough to get over the monster in left, which is 310 feet away. It sets up, I think, is a really good spot for offense. The Blue Jays, because they have tons of power, they're in a park that plays up right-handed power, and they're facing a pitcher that gives up right-handed power. And the Red Sox, Fenway doesn't play up left-handed power as much as it does right-handed power, but you're just facing a pitcher that lets lefties put it in play. And so far this year has not been able to limit the hard contact against him either.
How far do you think you could hit a baseball off a pitching machine right now?
Not very far.
Okay.
My swing is probably ass.
Well,
I haven't even played like softball in probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Like, do you think you can get one to the monster?
Are we talking like I get 5 swings, or are we talking like I can kind of get like my swing back and get into a rhythm? Because like physically, yes, I can hit it to the monster.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you 20 or something.
Yeah.
Do you think you can put one? Do you think you can get over the monster at any point?
I doubt I can hit a ball.
Metal bat.
Still probably no.
Okay. You have no concept. Larry C, how fast do you think you could throw? Do you want to pull that up? Jordan, can you cue up Adam throwing out the first pitch at the Orioles game?
Yeah, that was it was a strike.
The last time that I tried was 71 at a Braves game. Yeah. I assume I don't have that in my arm.
Yeah, I have no idea. It hurts me to throw a ball for my dog.
I felt like I had to go and get Tommy John the moment I threw that ball. Like, obviously it wasn't exactly stretched out. I would guess that I can get to like 65 now once and hope that my arm's still attached. Yeah, none of it would be fun.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. There's a much better chance of me hitting balls off the monster than me like breaking 80 right now.
Oh my God, dude, I couldn't do it with a crow hop.
Right.
I couldn't do it with a crow hop. All right, well then let's talk bats here. Blue Jays, 3rd in top stack, 3rd in ownership. Red Sox, 8th and 8th. Let's lead it off with the Blue Jays. Most of the lineup is around 10% owned. Is this a team you're looking to get to? Because stack score is quite a bit under the ownership.
For which team?
Blue Jays.
Yeah, I like getting to both of them. 12% ownership, 12% chance of being the top stack. They are not as much of a value stack, 3.5% ownership, but still 3rd in, or 3.5% chance of being the top value rather, but still 3rd in stack score. I like them quite a bit.
They look good. They seem, other than price, they seem very easy to get to. Do you think this would be a good landing spot if you were trying to put together a Jake Irvin lineup?
Wait, why would I be putting together a Jake Irvin lineup?
Save salary to get to 5,200, 6K, 6,200, 5,800, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this Jays lineup.
Yeah, like that's it. I don't think you're going to have to go that low, but okay. If you were, like, yeah, the Blue Jays would be one of the teams you're trying to pay up for.
Okay. I just thought it was interesting that like Irvin with that price tag, not really pulling any ownership, but you're still getting relatively heavy. 10% isn't all that heavy, but like you're still getting ownership to the Blue Jays. Interesting that you don't even have to go all the way down for it. I feel like we used to get 4K pitchers all the time.
I would think a team like Toronto is like why you're seeing a little bit more ownership than you're going to be comfortable with guys like Michaelis, Schmidt, Sears.
Yeah. Best Blue Jays bat?
Guerrero.
Yeah. Probably, right? Him or Chapman, I guess.
I mean, you can also throw in Bichette and Springer and
Yeah, or the team, the entire team.
Right.
How do you want to handle the Red Sox?
I
Eighth in
like
ownership.
I like them a lot. They're kind of similar to Cleveland for me, where I haven't built lineups yet. I'm in the process of trying to get all that stuff updated right now, but
Sure.
I don't know if I'll get to them, but I really like the way they set up against Manoah. I like the fact that you have good left-handed hitters just back to back to back to back. You get a nice balance of cheap and really, really good. Devers obviously is just going to be one of the best third base plays every time he's on a slate, pretty much. Verdugo and Yoshida are reasonably priced, but then you can offset paying up for those guys with Jarren Duran hitting fifth. He gives you some power and speed. Tristan Casas, 2,600, gives you plenty of power at first base. Emmanuel Valdez, not a guy that I'm going out of my way to get to, but he's only 2,400. So it's nice that you can kind of offset some of that, some of the more expensive guys without sacrificing a ton in the way of upside.
Anything else we should be touching on here for Red Sox and Blue Jays? Interesting game.
Yeah, just really like the bats.
All righty.
But both pitchers are good enough that you're not going to get crazy ownership. And also, obviously there's a good chance neither stack does well, but that's also the case even with bad pitching. But yeah, I just like the way both teams set up against the weaknesses of these two pitchers.
Even better than that previous game, you guys hitting the like button so that we can get up to 100, and you guys signing up to check out SoRare, sponsor of this show. Link in the description. This is the future of fantasy sports, folks. Get ready for it. Instead of approaching it the way that you're used to, now you are buying cards on an open market and you maintain them moving forward. You don't just pick a guy for one day and then you start over the next day picking a different guy. You are building a stable of cards that you maintain. When you use these cards, you gain XP. That allows you to get slightly better versions of that card. Little bits of boosts when you use them moving forward. SoRare's existed for a while, a couple of years at this point. Their soccer product, very much established, fantastic. They then started baseball and the NBA right now. Things are going great here. You're still trying to build a lineup. You're still trying to put together the highest fantasy score that you can, but you're buying and selling and trading these cards on the open market. There are uniqueness levels. There are different categories based on how quote unquote powerful your cards can be. You're getting rewards for multiple types of contests, and this is taking place around the world. It's a great mechanism. It is only going to grow. Now is the time to get your feet wet, get in the door while you can, get a leg up on the competition, because this is going to grow and grow and grow and has been growing. It will be a lot better for you if you start early. If you could go back in time and aggressively play on FanDuel and DraftKings in 2014, that would be very lucrative to you, given the way that the industry looks now. You can sort of do the same thing right now with SoRare. So go check it out, everybody. 4 more games to go. We're at the midway point of this one. The Royals taking on some garbage Baltimore team. 4.1 run implied total for Kansas City, 4.9 for the Orioles. Zach Greinke going up against Kyle Gibson. Evidently, this matchup is taking place in 2009. Greinke, 5,600 unowned. Kyle Gibson, 8,100, mostly unowned. Are you getting to your boy Gibson?
No, not really. I wouldn't expect to. He's okay if you're playing 150 lineups or 20 lineups or whatever, and you get a little bit. Sure, he's low owned. He's got a pretty long leash. He can go deep in the games, but not a great strikeout pitcher. He's not been great at limiting power this year. It is a good park to pitch in, but 119 actual ISO allowed to righties this year. Really, really good. 211 expected ISO to righties. Not great. 230 actual ISO allowed to lefties. 183 expected ISO to lefties. So he's gotten a little bit unlucky there, but across the board has not been great at limiting hard contact, doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, 17% to lefties, 21 to righties. If you play him, it's simply hey, this pitcher is decent. You have ownership going to a lot of pitchers on this slate that you're not going to be very comfortable with in that, mid-range or towards the bottom. And Gibson's low owned. That's sort of the case to be made for him, but I doubt that I'll get there much. I would expect I probably get there more than Greinke. Greinke, very tough matchup against the Orioles. Really no strikeouts left in his arm. If you were going there, it would simply be I need to pay down, and at least nobody is playing him, whereas people are playing, JP Sears. Like Zach Greinke should not be 1/16th the ownership of JP Sears, for example. Sure. But still, I just wouldn't expect to really be getting to Greinke.
Zach Greinke is the MLB version of us talking about trying to hit a ball off the monster.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Or how fast can you throw?
Yeah, I'll say the question isn't really like what number can you top. It's like at what point does your velocity intersect with Zach Greinke's velocity?
Maybe never in my entire life. Well, let's talk about your bats then. 4th in top stack, 4th in stack score, 4th in ownership. Are you going to be a homer and play the Baltimore Orioles today?
Always. I don't really know how you don't like them here. Greinke is at the very, very end of his career. So far this year, he's not doing a very good job of limiting power. He was okay at it last year. 116 expected ISO last year to lefties, 184 to righties. This year, you're looking at 200 to lefties, 229 to righties. And not that I want to just put all the weight into what he's done this year, but you are talking about a pitcher that has very clearly been over the hill and just getting by on deception and being really smart and understanding how to pitch for years. At some point, that just ends and you are done. Like, not saying that that's the case right now for Greinke, but like you saw with Bumgarner, where it was very apparent for several years that he was on the backside of his career and eventually it was just going to be done. Greinke doesn't have a lot left, and it could just be that he is bad now, like even worse now. That combined with the Orioles just have a lot of really, really good hitters. And you have some value here as well, because the top of the order is pretty expensive. You have a $6K Mullins leading off, $5,500 Rutschman, who is always one of the best catching options. Mountcastle, I mentioned yesterday, has been extremely unlucky in terms of his expected WOBA versus actual. Going into yesterday's game, 301 actual WOBA, 389 expected. Followed that up with 2 home runs and a double yesterday, had 2 doubles 2 games ago. He's hitting the ball really well, has been all season long for the most part. Hasn't necessarily shown up in his numbers, but 4,700 for him looks good. Santander is fine at 4,400, but then you get Kyle Stowers hitting 5th at 2K flat. Not a big major league track record for him, but he has shown plenty of power at AAA in the minor leagues. 2K against Zach Greinke is a very reasonable price tag. It offsets some of those pay up guys. Then you get Jorge Mateo, who's back close to 5K, but he's been hitting extremely well. He's always had power and speed, but been a below average hitter. This year, he's striking out at about half the rate that he was last year. He's walking more and he's hitting the shit out of the ball in addition to stealing bases. So he's expensive, but he's always had upside, and at least so far this year, he's actually shown improvements in terms of hitting in general. So, always like him as a shortstop. The bottom of the order gives you some more value if you need it. Adam Frazier, second base outfield at 2,500. Ryan O'Hearn, first base outfield at 2,400. Those guys are both cheap. So I do like getting to the Orioles quite a bit here.
Makes sense. I think they look fantastic as well. If you guys want the opinion of someone that isn't a raging homer that is sitting in Baltimore right now as he gives these opinions. Just putting that out there. What about the Kansas City side? 12th in top stack, 4th in value. They are 7th in ownership. Doesn't feel like the best spot in the world, but it's not like Gibson's terrifying on the other side.
Yeah, I'm interested in Kansas City, particularly the top of the order, and that's normally the case for me with the Royals. Bobby Witt is always going to be one of your best shortstop options. Vinny Quintino at 3,800 continues to be a really good value. Salvador Perez is always going to be one of your highest upside catcher options. MJ Melendez has catcher and outfield eligibility, which is take advantage of that while you still can. He's going to lose that catcher eligibility soon. The Royals have said that he will not be catching for the foreseeable future because he is hitting like shit, and they would prefer him to focus on being able to hit than worrying about catching. So,
do you know how they're assigned?
No, I mean, no. Like, I know for DraftKings and FanDuel, no. I know for like FFFFFC or whatever it is. Like, you have to start X amount of games at a position, and you just
let the CD was skipping there for a second.
I don't remember how many. I guess it's FFBC for baseball. I guess. Yeah. I know they have like designated rules for how they assign it in season long, but for DFS, I mean, we've seen it in basketball. I think somebody just wakes up and says like, "Oh yeah, this is what I think he plays." But yeah, like for right now, getting catcher outfield eligibility on him is pretty valuable, even though he has been struggling. Nick Prado hitting 6th is, as of last year, a top 100 hitting prospect. he's cheap. So Witt, Pasquantino, Perez in particular, I like. But if you mix in some Melendez, some Prado, I don't have any issues with that either.
All righty. Let's go to game number 6, unless you have anything else here.
No. Trying to update for Milwaukee's lineup, which just came out. So we have all the lineups now.
Cardinals and Angels, 3.7 run implied total for the Cards, 4.2 for the Angels, Miles Mikolas and Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani 23% owned at 11,400. Mikolas 20% owned at 6,100. How are you feeling about Ohtani, seeing his ownership creep up a little bit closer to Dylan Cease? Do you see yourself paying all the way up for Shohei?
Yeah, I really like Ohtani, especially because he's not getting that much ownership. The downside, of course, is that, if you are looking to go to one of the more expensive teams like Toronto, that $1,100 probably will end up mattering. But Ohtani is a really, really good pitcher. 33% strikeout percentage, give or take, since the start of last season. On paper, the Cardinals are a tough matchup. They've been bad so far this year. 3.5 implied run total for them. And it's not like Dylan Cease has a perfect matchup either. So this isn't, Dylan Cease facing the A's and Shohei Ohtani facing Goldschmidt and Arenado and those guys. So I prefer Ohtani if I can find the salary for him.
What do you want to do with Mikolas here? Pulling 20% ownership feels a little surprising, but talk to me here.
Yeah, it's really surprising to me. I think it's probably just a roster construction thing. You don't have the best, 8 to 9K range of arms on this slate. So you're probably just seeing people end up offsetting the Ohtani and Cease salaries with guys in this price range. And while I do prefer Varland, it would be pretty crazy to act like Varland is like head and shoulders better than Mikolas or anybody else, really. So that's probably why you're seeing the ownership. But Mikolas has never been a good strikeout pitcher. And now you have him pitching without a shift, which clearly is going to hurt guys that pitch to contact, and not doing as good a job at all of limiting power so far this year either. 233 expected ISO to lefties, 204 to righties. So, again, he's 6,100. Hitting is really tough. He could certainly go give you a good enough game. But I don't really like the matchup. I don't like him as a pitcher. I don't like the ownership. I actually kind of like the idea of going to the Angels against him.
Talk to me about it. 13th in ownership, 8th in our top stack tool. Obviously, you don't get the benefit of rostering Shohei Ohtani, unfortunately, but are you still willing to get here?
Yeah, that's the one thing that sucks, is not being able to roster Ohtani, since he is pitching. But, as I just said, Mikolas has struggled with power to both sides of the plate so far this year. Not a lot of left-handed power for the Angels, but even without Ohtani, clearly you're happy to get to Mike Trout. Hunter Renfroe's got a bunch of power and is facing a pitcher that doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. Neto is a cheap shortstop leading off. Rendon, Drury, Ward are all reasonably priced. It's a pretty high upside Angels team to only have a 4 implied run total.
It just sucks so much that you can't roster Ohtani. You just insane. Can't they just ask ChatGPT how to fix it?
What'd you say?
Can't they just ask ChatGPT how to fix it?
Yeah, well, it sucks because not only do you just want to roster Ohtani, but from a stacking standpoint, not only are you missing out on what's likely to be a guy producing a lot of runs for them, it just limits the iterations you can make of that stack.
Yep. Yeah, it's really, really unappealing. Do you want the Cardinals at all on the opposite side of Ohtani?
No.
I didn't think so. Any individual bat that you would be willing to get to?
Goldschmidt, Arenado, Gorman, they're all fine, but probably not.
What's a lot better than the Cardinals for today? That would be May Bundle. That is the promo code. One big word. If you are looking to ride the wave and celebrate Steve Buzzard, aka DeColt, just absolutely smashing this entire industry, we're trying to give back to you guys. We're doing a promo. 3 days, either weekly or monthly, of Stokastic plus Platinum will cost you just $5. Does not include Fantasy Cruncher, but you can add that on if you need to. Again, May Bundle is the promo code. Got to give a shout out to Jake as well in the hockey streets. Picked up some wins in the NHL. So kudos to him. It's just not the same thing as what Steve's been doing is all. We're talking about different shit. But again, $5 for 3 days, either weekly or monthly, Stokastic Platinum. Again, the promo code May Bundle. You see it on the screen. One big word. Either click the link that shows up in chat or in the description. But come join us because we have a ton of stuff going on right now. Baseball, hockey, NBA playoffs, MMA on the weekends, golf from Thursday to Sunday. I'm sure I'm missing other sports and NASCAR and other racing type events. Lots of stuff that you can do with a Stokastic Platinum package right now. All right, folks, let's get that over 100 likes for 530 viewers. If we can get up to 100, we've got 2 more games to talk about before we get out of here. And we transition over to NBA Live before lock. So game number 7, we're off to Coors. Colorado Rockies, 5.8 run implied total. Brewers, 6.1. Kyle Freeland and Eric Lauer. Will you be rostering a pitcher in Coors today?
I will not.
Fair enough. Fair enough. If you were, I assume that would be Lauer.
Yeah, if I were, it would be Lauer. I was more interested in Peralta yesterday. If you were going to go that route, I don't think you need to do it today.
Fair enough. Well, then let's start with
do it yesterday either. But
let's start with the bats. Brewers, number 1 in top stack, number 2 in top value, number 1 in ownership. They look great.
They look really good. Like you said, the value is there. The top stack percentage is there. They're nearly double the next closest team, which is Colorado, in top stack percentage. They're pulling 20. The thing that's really interesting is they're pulling 22% ownership. They have a 22% chance of being a top stack. They're also first in top value percentage at 15%. So they're first in top in stack score by more than double Colorado. And the ownership isn't as high as you would expect it to be given how cheap they are. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that, they have some expensive bats, Yelich, Adames, Tellez, all 5K or more. Contreras is 4,800, but you have Mike Brosseau hitting cleanup in Coors at 3,500. Does have plenty of pinch hit risk. Once they get into the bullpen, he will probably come out. But you have a $3,600 Voit, $2,400 Tyrone Taylor. There's a lot of ways to offset the salaries of guys like Yelich, Adames, and Tellez.
Yeah, I didn't have the most updated version. Number 1 across the board there. Anything you're trying to do here in order, if you're going to a chalky Brewer stack, obviously you're looking to get a little bit lower owned for the other 3 guys, but essentially that are in your lineup. How do you see your pitching combinations playing out for the Brewers? Because I don't feel like we've had much to say about the single digit ownership pitchers.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the kind of team where Kyle Gibson potentially does come into play, pulling 3% ownership. Maybe this is where you go to Shane Bieber at 10% instead of Cease or Gilbert, who are both pulling 36%. I think that's one way to approach it. Maybe this is where you roll the dice on an Alek Manoah at 4%. Guys that you don't really want, but they at least have a path to being good. Also, this is a team where you could use them as 3-mans in a low-owned 5-man stack. You can use guys from the bottom of the order that are cheap and not getting as much ownership. There's a lot of ways you can do it.
What about the Rockies side here? They're second in top stack, second in ownership. They just don't happen to be as cost efficient, and outfield, 1, 2, 3, just not as appealing of a stack start in general.
Yeah, they have the more difficult matchup, but it is interesting to have the same implied run total. They are second in top stack percentage, going slightly under owned, but they're a lot more expensive as well. And like you said, 3 outfielders at the top. Typically you like getting one-off outfielders just because there's a lot of good outfielders to choose from. CJ Cron at first base looks really good individually. Elias Diaz hitting 5th as a catcher is nice. The bottom of the order is pretty inexpensive. Grichuk looks good. You can use either Trejo or Tovar up the middle to offset some salary as well. But I understand why the Brewers are getting more ownership, just because their lineup is more stack friendly. But it does make me interested in the Rockies just at half the ownership as well.
Who stands out most to you from the Rockies?
Cron.
Yeah, no disagreements there. It's just a shitty lineup.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, but that's what happens when you play in Coors. You become more appealing. Which team are you more likely to be fading?
Probably the Rockies, since they don't offer the same value.
Okay.
It would be different. My expectation, and again, this could be wrong because my lineups aren't done yet, but my expectation is that because the Brewers aren't projected to go over owned, I probably still get to them.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else here for this game. It's very clearly, we've got 35% aggregate ownership coming into the Rockies and Brewers. So 65% of all of the hitting ownership exists in the other 7 games. Massive for today.
And to be fair, like neither of these pitchers are terrible.
No.
They're not good. They're not bad. They're just sort of there. The Rockies yesterday had a good amount of them against Peralta. Peralta's a hell of a lot better than anything else in this game, pitching wise.
Yeah. I have nothing else here for Rockies and Brewers.
Me neither.
Then we will close this one out just shy of 100 likes, so hit that thumbs up. Oakland A's, 3.3 run implied total. Mariners, 4.3. JP Sears and Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert, the highest owned player on today's slate, 37.8%, 8,500. Great matchup here against the A's. Great park against the A's as well. But not to be outdone, Sears, 15% owned, 5,700 seems to be the sort of where the line is drawn for paydown options. Talk to me about Gilbert.
Looks really good. Good pitcher's park, good matchup, good pitcher, very reasonable price tag. There's just a lot to like. And I understand why he's getting 36% ownership. Where, Cease, I understand it in the sense that he's a really good pitcher. He's less expensive than Ohtani. I understand it more for Gilbert because you're getting a much better price tag on him at 8,500. I don't look at Cease at 10-3 against the Twins and say like, wow, he's underpriced. I look at $8,500 Gilbert, especially in the context of this slate where he's $1,000 less than Bieber, he's less than Stroman, and say like, wow, yeah, he's underpriced here in Oakland against the A's.
Do you like Sears? Like, where does he stand? Okay, I was gonna say, where does he stand for you in this like group of four at the bottom?
No, I said that I was a little surprised Michaelis was getting ownership in this range. I am really surprised Sears is getting ownership. The park is good. That's it. That's all I can say as far as like why, and he's cheap. That's all I can say as far as like why people would be playing JP Sears here. Since the start of last season against right-handed bats, 20.8% strikeout percentage, 219 expected ISO. This year, he does have a 30% strikeout percentage against righties. I guess that, obviously is good. 319 expected ISO. Mariners are running out a lineup that, with the exception of J.P. Crawford hitting 8th and Jared Kelenic hitting 3rd, is entirely right-handed, and they are good. Rodriguez, France, Suarez, Hernandez, all good right-handed power hitters. Tom Murphy has some pop from the right side as a cheap catcher. AJ Pollock hitting 7th is fine. So like again, I get he's cheap. He's in a good park. It's still baseball. It's hard to get hits. He can certainly pay off that price tag. I would be interested in him if it was just like, 5-6% ownership coming to Sears and everybody's going to Michaelis or Varland. If he's going to get similar ownership to those guys, I would rather be getting to them when I pay down. And I do actually like the idea of getting to this Mariners team that does have a 4.6 implied run total.
Well, let's talk about this Mariners team. 5th in top stack, 3rd in top value, 5th in ownership, 3rd in stack score. Julio Rodriguez leading the way, 17% owned in the leadoff spot. Feels like targeting Seattle against that 15% ownership of Sears is good, other than the fact that it's a terrible park.
Yeah, the park's the only thing I don't like, the park and the weather being 55 degrees, but that's pretty much been the case across the board. So I like getting to them. I also like the Sears is pulling ownership. That one, it naturally drives down the ownership coming into Seattle, but it also just gives you a little bit more of an advantage if you play Seattle and they do well, because you have 10-15% of the field losing out on JP Sears. So I do really like the right-handed power from the Mariners.
Wonder what their ballpark will look like once they move to Oakland, or move to Las Vegas rather.
Yeah. Probably nicer and a lot more hitter friendly.
I didn't get a chance to ask, I can't ask Katie what she thought of the Raiders stadium. That's where she saw Taylor Swift, because she will have no concept of explaining a stadium to me.
Right.
And obviously it's going to look a little bit different for a Taylor Swift show than it does for a Raiders football game, but I bet that's a pretty good time. A's bats here against Seattle. Anything against Logan Gilbert?
I don't see it.
Yeah, there's 3% ownership coming into two separate guys and nothing else. So not a lot going on the Oakland end. All right. Well, we've got NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. We crossed that 100 like barrier. Let's sum it up quickly. Favorite pitchers?
Gilbert, Ohtani, Cease.
Hitter or stacks rather?
I mean, Brewers, as long as you can find ways around the ownership. I like Toronto. I like Baltimore. As far as contrarian stacks that aren't getting ownership, I like Cleveland. I like Boston.
Well, that's going to do it, folks. We are done here. Thank you for joining us for MLB Live Before Lock. Coming up next, NBA Live Before Lock. followed by PGA Live before lock. Don't go anywhere, guys. 2 more hours worth of content. Talk to you later. Peace.